I was going to confess to Philip on the day of our coming-of-age ceremony. He lured me into his rival's bed. Later, as he wanted, I successfully shook his rival's heart, allowing him to finally get Bella, whom he had been longing for. But when I eloped with someone else, he went crazy. Philip liked his brother's woman. Longing, loving but not getting. In order to get what he wanted, he adopted me when I was 16. On a day when it rained for 3 consecutive days, as Philip's supply cart approached the orphanage, the wheels slipped, almost hitting the youngest child in the orphanage. I rushed to the front of the cart without hesitation, pushing him away just in time. The cart quickly stopped, the door opened, and a foot landed on the ground, a clean and expensive leather shoe, a sharp contrast to the impoverished environment. Ignoring the pain, I tried to stand up but fell in the mud. A black umbrella timely moved above my head, sheltering me from the heavy rain. A cold and handsome face came into view. He looked down at me, emotionless, and wiped the mud off my face. As he recognized my face, his deep eyes suddenly narrowed, then he tugged at the corner of his lips and inexplicably smiled. I felt a chill as he stared at me, then I tried to get up again, but he gently scooped me into his arms. His voice feather-light in my ears. "Don't move, you might hurt your bones." Then, he instructed the person holding the umbrella to drive us to the hospital. The warm air conditioning and fragrant scent in the car. He held my hand without ever letting go. I spent 3 days in the hospital before being discharged. The day I returned to the orphanage, the person who held me that day was also there. Sitting on the creaky bed I usually slept in. Legs crossed, an air of sophistication. Upon seeing me, he only said 3 sentences. "Your name is Nicole, right?" "I'm Philip. I know you have a brother who needs a kidney transplant. I can help find a donor for him and cover all the surgery costs. Will you be with me?" I nodded without hesitation. My brother Nick, who depended on me, was only 12 years old, suffering from chronic kidney failure. A kidney transplant was his only chance at life. But we were too poor. Not to mention treatment, even if he craved a piece of candy, I had to compete with other children to grab one when kind people donated snacks to the orphanage. So, I went with the man in front of me to Philip's house. And my brother Nick was sent abroad by Philip for treatment. The 2 siblings were separated by distance. I was nurtured by Philip until I turned 18, and he hosted a grand coming-of-age ceremony for me. Almost all the prominent figures attended. He announced me as the lost daughter of the Philip family, recently found, who would be cherished like a jewel in the future. The audience applauded warmly, but someone whispered, "The Philip family's daughter is so beautiful, but why does she look a bit like Bella?" The voice was quickly interrupted by a warning. I curled my fingers slightly, and when Philip stepped down to the upstairs to rest, I followed him with my long skirt in hand. 9 o'clock at night. The darkness veiled the huge French windows outside. The lights on the 3rd floor were off, but with the crystal chandelier hanging high, I could see Philip smoking by the railing on the 2nd floor, his eyes fixed on a girl on the 1st floor. In a white dress, dark hair, similar to my usual appearance. She was holding the arm of a young handsome man, laughing sweetly and shyly. Philip squinted, smoke slowly wafting from his mouth, his emotions slightly out of control. The look in his eyes was not unfamiliar to me. Whenever a child at the orphanage was adopted by a kind person, the remaining children would show such expressions. Envy, jealousy, unwillingness. I stood behind him and asked, "Why did you say I'm the lost daughter of the Philip family? We don't have any blood relationship." Philip turned around. "Is it not good? Many people couldn't get what you have. So, can't I like you?" His words were too straightforward, even making Philip raise an eyebrow. I liked Philip. Since 2 years ago, when he said he would save my little brother, I fell in love with him. Because of him, I no longer had to fear that my only relative in the world would rot in a damp, dark room one night. I wouldn't be harassed by the orphanage cook, I could eat without having to fight with others, and I no longer worried about being abandoned in a dark alley with rats. How could I not crave light? So, I liked him wholeheartedly. I even hoped to be with him forever. Philip didn't respond, but instead handed me 2 glasses of freshly poured red wine, nudged me to the railing, and pointed at the man he had been watching. "He's Jason, my best friend. Go offer him a drink when you come back, I'll tell you my answer." Taking a glance at Philip, then at the crimson liquid in hand, I went downstairs without much questioning. But as I was about to ask Philip for an answer after serving the drink, things in front of me started to blur, and soon, my vision turned completely black. When I woke up again, it was broad daylight, and I found myself lying in a strange room. My dress was in disarray. And on the other side of the bed sat Jason, who I had served the drink to earlier. The buttons of his shirt were all undone, and there was a lipstick mark on his collar. Facing the scene in front of him, he panicked, holding his head and muttered, "What's going on? How did this happen?" At that moment, a scream came from the door. It was the girl who had been with Jason before, trembling and pointing in our direction, shouting in a heart-rending voice, "What are you doing? Jason, how could you do this behind my back?" "Bella? It's not like that." I don't know why Jason tried to explain, but Bella slapped me hard, then left in tears. Jason followed out immediately. I licked the corner of my mouth, tasting blood. Couldn't muster the energy to put my clothes back on, even after rummaging through them on the bed for a while. Tears finally started flowing down my face. I clenched my fingertips, creating a blood blister in my palm. Fake. Everything was fake. Only the scheming was real. News of the scandal between the daughter of Philip's house and the betrothed young master of Jason's family hit the trending topics overnight. But it was quickly suppressed by various powers. In my room, I burned the diary filled with teenage heartaches to ashes, then picked up scissors and cut my waist-length hair into pieces. Finally, I understood why Philip loved my hair so much. Even though the company's affairs were busy, he would rush back every day to comb my hair. He didn't allow me to perm or dye it, or even trim it as I pleased. Even the scent of shampoo was personally blended by him. It was all because of Bella, wasn't it? I was foolish enough to try to please him by excelling in every subject he asked me to learn. 2 years. I thought he was somewhat different towards me, but who knew he had a stand-in for his rival all along? The smell of smoke alerted the housekeeper, who quickly summoned Philip. He immediately took the scissors from my hand. The sharp edge of the blade cut my palm and he ignored my injury, glaring at the scattered hair on the floor. "Nicole, don't go crazy," I asked bitterly. "Is this why you adopted me?" The scandal between Philip's daughter and Jason's son quickly spread. How would Jason continue his relationship with Bella after this? But why choose me? If you compare our looks, Bella and I are worlds apart. Even if I tried to imitate her dressing style, we only shared a resemblance of 3%. "Beautiful," a silent Philip finally gave me an answer. "Your eyes are captivating. When I saw you at 16, I knew no man could escape from your gaze. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Changes. They suddenly decided to get married in a week, and I was out of time. I was completely defeated. A love game of the wealthy. I was just a pawn chosen. The housekeeper came to report that Bella had replied online, willing to move forward with Jason, no matter what. The wedding would be postponed to 2 months later, but would still take place. Philip's face turned pale, smashing a vase against the wall, but it wasn't enough to vent his jealousy. He proceeded to smash everything in the room. I had no interest in watching his rage, so I turned to leave, but he stopped me at the door. Philip's voice hoarse, with a tone that brooked no questioning. "Nicole, in 2 months, I want them separated, or you'll never see Nick your whole life." I turned around in anger. It turns out that saving Nick was also part of his plan. Despite everything, Bella still didn't abandon him. Why did he think I could seduce Jason? "You can," Philip looked directly into my eyes. "I told you, no man can escape from your gaze. Nicole, you are a natural temptress." The next day, I agreed to become a tool for Philip's favoritism. Jason came to my house to apologize. Philip took out a whip and had him kneel in the family's ancestral hall to be beaten. He explained that I had suffered a lot in the orphanage, and before Philip's family could pamper me, why should I endure this humiliation on my coming-of-age day? Jason, aware of his fault, endured 2 lashes. Just as Philip was about to land the third, I rushed out and hugged Jason from behind. Philip's whip was laced with personal grievances, and it almost made me faint from the pain. Tears flowed directly without the need for squeezing. "Philip, stop, it was me who drugged Jason, it was me who unilaterally liked him, so if you have to punish someone, punish me." Before I could finish my sentence, I fainted. When I woke up again, I saw Jason standing by the bed. He asked, "What did you mean earlier? Did you drug me?" I struggled to sit up, shook my head and said, "No, but by saying that, my brother won't blame you." I looked down, forced a pale smile, and said, "Jason, if you want to marry the person you love, go ahead, I'm fine with it." Jason tightly pursed his lips. I read 2 words on his face: pity. Soon, the person who drugged us was found. Philip's methods were despicable, finding a scapegoat. The culprit confessed that he was hired by someone with a grudge against Philip, deliberately drugging us on my coming-of-age day to embarrass us. When Jason heard the news, he came to the Phillips house where I was. I was wearing a thin skirt and had been hesitating with a razor on my wrist. Jason rushed over and grabbed my hand. "Nicole, what are you doing?" Tears fell down my face, eyes shimmering, nose slightly red. I was broken like a porcelain doll. "Jason, I thought coming back to this family, finding my own relatives, would give me support and happiness, but compared to my sister, my brother seems to care more about the family's reputation. He wants to marry me to Jerry. Jerry is a year older than me and his wife has just died. How could he do this?" Jason angrily punched the wall, then wiped the tears from my eyes. "Nicole, don't cry, I'll talk to your brother." Soon, shouting could be heard from the study. "What else can we do? After such a big scandal, which family in this circle would be willing to marry her? You care for her so much, will you marry her?" Jason didn't respond from the other side. When he came back to me, his face was white as a sheet. He apologized to me. "I'm sorry, Nicole. I'm really powerless. I should be responsible for you, but I already have Bella." His response was as I expected. Childhood sweethearts, how could they easily part ways? I just dimmed the light in my eyes in front of him, quietly staring at my toes. Jason held me in his arms with guilt, saying sorry repeatedly, begging me not to do anything foolish. I just let him hold me and then wet his chest with tears. "Jason, it's not your fault. It's fate. Things are fine here, I have no worries about food and clothing, I am not hungry. Only that it lacks human touch. Until now, only you are willing to give me a hug, I am content." Jason is a bastard. Only at the age of 7 was he brought back to the family estate. Like me, he had a tough childhood, and upon returning home, he faced disdain once again. So, after hearing my words, he tightly held onto my waist. I cut up all the elegant princess dresses in the wardrobe with scissors, right in front of Philip. He frowned and said, "Without wearing these, you don't look like Bella." I chuckled and walked barefoot to Philip, taking the cigarette from his fingertips. Ever since I found out he had designed me, all my love for him vanished. You rich playboys are the most pretentious, appearing gentlemanly on the surface, claiming to like gentle ladies, yet you can't resist sexy and charming women. White dresses are really boring. Who told you all this? I tossed him a book, a romance novel about aristocratic love and torment. Philip furrowed his brows. What messy book is this? It's always good to broaden your knowledge a bit. Then, my phone rang. It was Jason. He asked me to go out and stargaze. Since that day, Jason often asked me out. He had already been labeled as unfaithful. He couldn't bear another scandal. I raised my phone. The answer is what you want, but how to do it, you don't need to worry. I took a drag of my cigarette, blowing the smoke all over Philip's face. Then I placed the cigarette imprinted with lipstick into his mouth. Philip's pupils contracted slightly. He had a cleanliness obsession. But he didn't dodge. Jason and I went to race motorcycles on the mountain road. I had just gotten my license not long ago, but my skills were quite good. We raced fiercely all the way, but I didn't let him win at all. Finally, we reached the mountaintop. Surprised, Jason said, "You're a girl riding a bike so fast?" I smiled at the distance because I'm not afraid of death. Mentioning the word death, Jason quickly covered my mouth. Probably he still felt lingering fear from the day I tried to slit my wrists. "Don't mention this word again." I nodded and gently kissed his cool palm. Jason's fingers curled slightly, then he released his hand. He cleared his throat. "You won the race. What wish do you want? Just say it." I thought for a moment. "Treat Bella well, make both of you happy." He was surprised. "Aren't you going to ask for something for yourself?" I looked at the starry sky, sighed. This is how my life is. If the gods can really hear wishes, let it be for those who can still find happiness. Jason frowned as if he had made a decision, grabbing my hand. "Nicole, I will never let you marry that Jerry." Jason said he wouldn't let me marry Jerry. But it's just that he wanted to introduce me to some wealthy families, not as noble as Philip's son. I sneered. And over with Bella, because Jason frequently hid his meetings with me from her and went to Philip to complain. Jason always said he was busy. Before he used to reply to my messages right away, but now, even before we got married, he started to brush me off. Marriage matters are so tedious, I have to do everything myself. With teary eyes, Bella leaned her head on Philip's shoulder. "You care more about me than he does," she said. Philip patted her back. "Jason's family is about to name the future heir. He must be very busy." "Bella, you have to understand. You are busy too," she pouted. "But no matter how busy you are, whenever I need you, you always make time." Philip's eyes softened. "Well, there's still time. Why don't you consider marrying me?" Bella suddenly stood up from his embrace, looking serious. "Philip, don't say that kind of thing again in the future." Seeing Philip's disappointment, Bella hugged his arm, saying, "But even if I marry Jason, we'll still be the best friends. You will always be the most important person in my life." "Philip, am I the most important person in your life too?" Philip nodded. Bella happily grabbed his phone. "Let me see if I'm still your top contact." And indeed, she was. Finally content, Bella said, "Promise me that this position will always belong to me, even if I get married, even if you get married, you cannot change it, okay?" "Okay." I just listened from outside. Turns out, in Philip's heart, the pure and immaculate Bella was just a woman of easy virtue. I shook my head. When Philip and Bella came out, they happened to run into me. Bella, with sharp eyes, quickly recognized that the coat on my shoulders belonged to Jason. Her eyelashes trembled dramatically as she questioned, "Did Jason go out with you?" I had no intention of hiding. "Yes, Jason saw that I was upset, so he took me out to dinner." "How dare you wear his clothes?" She lost her composure, rushing over to grab my clothes and scratched my neck a few times. "You've been harboring feelings for him for a long time, right? You even sleeping with him was your plan, right? Why are you so cruel at such a young age?" Philip stepped in to intervene, protecting Bella to prevent me from hurting her. "In fact, I am not weak in fighting. The orphanage is a place of survival of the fittest. I've always had to protect my sick younger brother, often getting into fights just to have a meal." So Philip misunderstood. Why would I harm her? I could only let her hit me. The crazier she hit, the greater the distance between Jason and her, the sooner Philip could embrace the beauty. And the sooner this drama would end. Bella, tired of hitting, said to Philip, "I want her to kneel down and apologize to me. Unless I allow it, she can't get up." Philip frowned. "Bella, she's still my sister. So you think I'm making trouble for no reason?" "Philip, you just said that I'm the most important person in your life. If you can't even do this, let's never meet again." Philip couldn't bear the pain of not seeing Bella, so he told me, "Nicole, go and apologize to Bella on your knees." So I knelt down and apologized to Bella. This one kneel lasted the whole night. It wasn't until the next morning that Bella came out of Philip's room. There were bite marks on Philip's shoulder blades from Bella. What exactly the two of them did remained unknown. But Philip seemed to be in a pretty good mood. For so many years, he had longed for Bella but couldn't have her. Ultimately, it was my intervention that brought him some solace. After sending Bella off, he remembered to help me. I was already numb all over, and he carried me into the room. "You did well, Nick will get the best medicine," he said. I didn't say anything. He instructed the butler to bring medicine. After putting me on the bed, he dabbed disinfectant and anti-inflammatory solution onto my neck with a cotton swab. "Bella got a little rough. Did she also break your mouth?" "Not the mouth," I said, pulling at the corner of my mouth, entangled with Jason by the wall. Philip's hand paused halfway, his voice lowering. "Jason kissed you?" "How absurd. Did you think talking to him was enough to lure him in?" Philip's lips tensed. "What else did he do?" I pondered for a moment, had a bit too much to drink, can't quite remember. He just pushed me down on the bed, roughly unbuttoning my clothes until he saw the bite mark on my collarbone and stopped. This bite mark was even deeper and fiercer than the one Bella left on him. "Jason. How dare he? You didn't resist?" His words amused me. I raised my numb hand to button up. It seemed like when I chose to enter this game, I had lost all sense of shame. "Philip, are you really forgetful? Wasn't it you who arranged for Jason and me to get together the first time?" Philip was speechless, then quickly said, "But nothing happened between you two at the time. You even had real-time monitoring. That's quite extreme." I mocked him and then struggled to get up to go back to the room. Philip grabbed my arm, saying, "He's not allowed to touch you again." "Then, do you still want Bella?" Philip fell silent. "What are you pretending for?" I shook off his hand and went back to the room. I didn't expect Jason to come find me either. Last night, he was the one who introduced me to a blind date. The fact that I wasn't welcome in Philip's family had spread in the circle, so the guy who came to meet me wasn't very polite either. After a few drinks, he started getting handsy. "Even though your reputation in the circle is ruined, I still really like you." I remained composed on the surface, but my hand under the table had already reached for the phone for help. The first person I called was Philip. He didn't pick up. I shouldn't have held out hope for him in the first place. Bella, who rarely sought him out, had taken his attention away from me. Right when I was about to call the police, Jason burst in. At that moment, I was already pinned down on the couch by that man. With my skirt raised to my thighs, Jason grabbed the man by his collar and punched him hard. The man spat out a mouthful of blood, cursing, "No, Jason, are you crazy? You introduced her to me, and now you're hitting me?" I also thought Jason was out of his mind. He clearly just wanted someone to take over my plate, so he wouldn't feel guilty. But why did he have a change of heart at the last minute? Jason took off his jacket and wrapped me in it, leading me out of the private room. Suddenly, he hugged me. "I'm sorry, Nicole. I was selfish. I was afraid you would disrupt my stable future, so I rushed to introduce you to someone. But when you actually went on a date, I panicked. Nicole, I don't want to push you towards anyone else again. I think I've grown fond of you. Do you like me? I don't like you. You men are the worst." Jason's promises alone weren't enough. If he could move on from his childhood sweetheart, how could he ever love me forever? Compared to Bella, I was just slightly prettier and more interesting. To completely separate them, there was still a difficult road ahead. Coincidentally, that same night, Bella punished me by making me kneel all night. Jason soon found out about it, and after comforting Bella on his end, he came to me. Seeing the scratch marks on my neck, he gently touched my head with concern. "Does it hurt, Nicole?" I shook my head, saying, "A little breeze and it won't hurt anymore." After hearing that, he smiled. Then he leaned over to my neck, blowing on it, and then kissed it. This scene happened to be seen by Philip, who came to bring me my medication. I saw his expression darken. After Jason left, Philip came in to treat me. He was not at all gentle, using the cotton swab to rub my neck as if trying to scrub off a layer of skin. It wasn't until I cried out in pain that he stopped. Playing the role of tempting Jason, "You're diving in pretty fast, huh?" I didn't know what was up with his strange attitude, so I smiled and said, "Isn't it all thanks to Big Brother's good guidance?" This seemed to anger him. He threw the cotton ball in his hand and stormed out. After that, Jason would often secretly take me out to play. We go bungee jumping, race cars, climb mountains, do everything that Bella wouldn't or couldn't do with him. He liked my novelty and charm, enjoyed my youth and beauty. And gradually got lost in it, unable to extricate himself. That day, he invited me to camp on the mountaintop, with only one tent, and we had to spend the night there. I knew what that meant. So I agreed to go. I think it's time for the next scene. I might be able to see Nick soon. When Jason and I reached the mountaintop, it was close to dusk. There were only a few red clouds left in the sky to the west. It was beautiful. It had been a long time since I last saw such a view. Jason grilled meat and boiled milk tea for me using a small stove, letting me eat on my own while he set up the tent on the side. By the time the sky was completely dark, the tent was all set up. Jason, tired, sat across from me at the table, drinking water from the cup I had used before. Just then, his phone rang. It was Bella calling. Although Jason had confessed to me not long ago, he had been walking a tightrope. He couldn't bear to break up with his childhood sweetheart, Bella, but he didn't want to give up the excitement I brought him either. Men, they want both the red rose and the white rose. Of course, I wasn't going to force him to make a decision. I just quietly enjoyed my dessert. I really didn't care anyway. Fortunately, Jason quickly hung up the phone and turned off his phone. I took a picture of the night view from the mountaintop and posted it on social media. Soon, a message from Philip came. "Where are you? The butler said you weren't at home." I replied, "Brother, I'm an adult now, why are you checking up on me?" Philip hated it when I called him brother because I only did so when I wanted to annoy him. "Come home. Have you forgotten the 9 o'clock curfew I set for you?" he demanded. "I haven't forgotten, but I have an important mission today," I said, turning my back and speaking in a low voice, emphasizing each word, "to bone with your rival." After saying that, Philip called immediately. I simply turned off my phone. The photos I posted didn't have any location information. "Philip, you better find me properly. The view, no matter how beautiful, gets boring after a while." Jason suggested, "It's getting cold, let's go back to the tent." I looked back at the lights suddenly turning on downhill, and a smile played on my lips. Sure. I and Jason entered the tent together. The space was cramped, a man and a woman alone, the ambiguous atmosphere heating up. Jason's hand touched my face, his throat rolled gently, and he asked, "Nicole, can I have you?" I nodded just as he was about to press me down and kiss me. The tent was forcefully lifted up. Over a dozen bodyguards surrounded us. Philip furiously kicked Jason aside, then picked me up like a chick. Through clenched teeth, he said, "Nicole, go home." I deliberately gave Jason a tearful look. Jason's face turned dark. Of course, I never intended to sleep with Jason in the first place. Philip's clothes were covered in mud. The mountain was misty at night, and the leading car got stuck in a mud pit, causing a chain of rear-end collisions. He climbed up to find me. When going down the mountain, the rescue car hadn't arrived yet. He held my wrist and led the way down to the turning point below, causing me to sprain my ankle. I pouted, "My foot hurts." Philip looked down, squatted, and rubbed ointment on my swollen ankle. The bodyguard next to him tried to be polite, "Sir, it's dark and slippery, let me do it." Philip glared at him, "Get lost." He carried me for a while until the car arrived, and then we went back home in the car. When we got home, he roughly threw me onto the couch. Through gritted teeth, he said, "Nicole, are you seducing Jason like this? How else do you want me to seduce?" I challenged him, "If I seduce you like this, would you fall for it?" Philip was speechless. "You are not allowed to see Jason again." "Why?" I asked. "Just don't see him." But Bella and Jason's wedding was coming soon. "If you don't act fast, you will miss your chance." Philip fell silent. He still couldn't let go. "It's okay, although I didn't sleep with Jason, I left something nice for you on purpose." I took out my phone, opened the album, and then threw the phone into Philip's hands. When he looked at it, his face darkened completely. It was a series of photos of Jason and me hugging and kissing from all angles. I sent them to Bella, so my efforts tonight weren't in vain. I smiled sweetly at him. Philip, am I amazing? Philip seemed to be provoked. He rushed over, pinched my neck, and forcefully kissed me. It seemed not enough. He bit my lip with his teeth, causing blood to flow. At that moment, a scream came from the door. It was Bella, coming to hold me accountable. She covered her mouth, but her words slipped through her fingers. Philip, what are you, and your sister? Before she could finish, tears in her eyes, she ran out. Philip simply looked away, then he crouched down and applied ointment to my swollen ankles. Aren't you going after her? I asked him. He just replied with a nonchalant not worth it. Rumors began to spread about the unclear relationship between me and Philip. The forbidden love story within high society, between siblings, sounded mysterious and thrilling. So, Jason and Bella reconciled soon afterward. Both were scions of wealthy families, and their marriage was a tie between the two families that couldn't be easily severed. Their wedding was approaching as well. I even stumbled upon their wedding photos on Twitter. Both of them were smiling, but for some reason, they looked more miserable than tearful. Philip has kept me under house arrest, not allowing me to get involved in Jason and Bella's affairs. I asked him, what, don't you want Bella anymore? Philip remained silent. Just when I thought he wouldn't answer, he said, Nicole, on the day of the adulthood ceremony, you said you liked me and wanted an answer from me. Do you still want to know that answer now? I chuckled. Of course not. Who would love someone who would throw themselves into another man's bed? Philip lowered his eyelids and continued, the day I found out you and Jason spent the night on the mountaintop, I was almost crazy with jealousy. I thought, if Jason really dared to touch you, I would kill him. Nicole, I found myself jealous for you. It seemed unbelievable to him too. He had loved Bella for so many years, loved her to the core, it became a habit, but now, his heart was stirred by another. Tortured by her, driven to madness. I will make sure Nick gets the best treatment. Will you stay by my side in the future, loving me as before? Will you? He asked. I didn't agree. Would you just ignore Nick then? He fell silent. I knew it. That's Philip for you. Vile and shameless. I hate him. But I said, okay, I agree with you. The day of Jason and Bella's wedding arrived quickly. I lay by the window watching the birds flying outside. Suddenly, memories of my days with Nick at the orphanage flooded my mind. By then, he was in bad shape. A little bully at the orphanage said, I wish Nick would die. When he does, his chicken legs will be mine to eat. The orphanage was also on the brink of collapse. Chicken legs were a rare treat, sometimes only available once every 2 months. So, I lost control and attacked him with stones, then grappled with him. I couldn't possibly win, but I wasn't afraid of death. No matter how many times I was beaten down, I could stand up and keep fighting. In the end, I grabbed his chicken legs. That night, Nick's lunchbox had 3 chicken legs. But Nick looked at me and cried, Sister, I don't want to eat chicken legs anymore. I miss Nick so much. I haven't seen him in a long time. Then, there was a knock on my window. To my surprise, it was Jason, who should have been getting married. Nicole, come with me. I was surprised. What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to get married today? I'm not getting married, I've made up my mind long ago. I won't be the heir and won't have to please Bella anymore. Nicole, I like you, I want to be with you. Jason was running away from his wedding for me? This was totally unexpected. I knew Philip had you locked up now, but he's also attending the wedding today. I brought people, we can get you out. Seeing my continued frown, he said, I know where Nick is. You know Nick? This meant he already knew my true identity. Perhaps he could also guess that this was all a scheme between me and Philip. You know everything, I don't care. He reached out his hand to me, smiled, Are you coming? We are running out of time. I nodded and jumped out of the window. I wanted to see Nick. Jason was easier to deal with compared to Philip. I didn't know where to go. I just sat in Philip's car driving out of the city. He was still in his wedding suit, holding a bouquet of flowers meant for the bride. He opened the window and threw the bouquet out. It's already time for the ceremony. The groom hasn't shown up. The hotel was in chaos. Philip's call came through, and I was considering pretending to still be at home, to delay Philip a bit more. But Philip yelled over the phone, "Nicole, did you elope with Philip? Don't you want to see Nick anymore? Come back home." The message spread quickly. Philip directly took away my phone, hung up, and threw it out of the window. "Nicole, don't think about anything. Philip's not worth relying on. He loves Bella so much. How much of his heart do you think is for you? When did you find out he liked Bella?" Philip sneered, knowing long ago. Bella knew too, but no one exposed it. I couldn't openly confront Philip, and Bella wanted to enjoy favors from both men these years. The road out of town was blocked. Philip's fleet quickly forced our car to a stop. He was incredibly capable. We had underestimated him after all. I urgently asked Philip, "Tell me where Nick is." At that moment, the car window was shattered with a baseball bat, the door was violently opened, and Philip pulled me out of the car. The others then controlled Jason on either side. Philip gripped my wrist, emotionless, and told the bodyguards, "Hit him." Upon hearing this, those people didn't care about Philip's status at all and just beat him on the ground. "No, stop it." I wanted to intervene, but Philip held me tightly in his arms. It wasn't until he raised his arm in defeat that those people stopped. Jason's mouth and nose were covered in blood. His eyes fierce. "One Bella isn't enough, now you're trying to take Nicole away from me. Philip, did you really think I wouldn't get angry?" Jason staggered to his feet, sneered, but his gaze shifted to me. "Nicole, what happened to Nick?" Before he could finish, Philip's face changed slightly, and he hurriedly pulled me away. From behind, Philip's voice continued. "Nick died half a year ago." I froze, feeling my blood turn to ice in my veins. After the kidney transplant, his body rejected it violently, and he died shortly after the surgery. Philip didn't even bother to buy him a grave. "Did he never tell you?" I looked at Philip in disbelief, my voice trembling. "Is what he said true?" Philip avoided my gaze and tried to comfort me, saying, "Come on, let's go home first." "Philip, answer me." Philip fell silent. I slapped him, tears streaming down uncontrollably. "Are you even human? 6 months ago, what was I doing?" I was taking all the courses Philip had arranged for. May was being trained to be Bella. To be the tool he could manipulate, to help him break up his rivals and crushes. But where was my Nick? In a foreign land, enduring the torment of illness, without a single loved one by his side. He was so timid and afraid of pain. In his last moments, how desperate must he have been? Would he call me sister? Would he cry out in pain? Would he resent me? But I knew nothing. Philip kept me in the dark, with only his plans and his Bella in his eyes. I was the most irresponsible sister in the world. Thinking I could handle everything perfectly, but ended up ruining my own brother. At this moment, Bella rushed over in a wedding dress. Seeing the scene, she became insane with jealousy. "Ha! Nicole, you deserve it. You stole what belonged to me, this is your retribution. Your brother deserved to die, and so do you." Philip rebuked, "Shut up. You dare to shout at me? Philip, you're shouting at me for someone else?" Bella looked incredulous, ran over to hit Philip's chest, but he pushed her aside. The sound of a woman crying echoed in my ears, and I fainted. When I woke up, I was at Philip's house, and he held my hand, asking softly, "How are you feeling? Any discomfort?" I pulled my hand away, eyes filled with anger. "Philip, I want to see Nick." He sighed and replied, "That afternoon, I saw Nick's urn. When we parted ways, he was only 12 years old, severely malnourished but tall for his age. That tall Nick had now become a small urn. How did it come to this?" I held the urn, my eyes empty, my tears dried up. I stopped eating and drinking all day. Without my brother, I didn't know what kept me going. Philip accompanied me, feeling guilty and pained, begging me not to torture myself. "Nicole, please don't do this. If you want to hit or scold me, go ahead, but please don't do this." "I'm afraid," he said. I looked at him blankly. "Then give Nick back to me, okay? Give him back, and I'll forgive you." He pursed his lips and stayed silent. After that, I started running away with Nick. We ran to the sea, to the cliff edge. But every time, Philip found us and brought us back. He kept me locked up at home, took away sharp objects, even had someone watch me when I bathed. I refused to eat, so he force-fed me. I couldn't sleep, so he put calming herbs in my drink. He was full of schemes towards me, but also so afraid of me dying. One night, I dreamt of Nick. He looked healthy, like when he was young. He said he had plenty of chicken legs and candy, more than he could finish, and he didn't need to fight or steal with anyone anymore. Tears streaming down my face, I asked him, "Did the operation hurt? Were you scared at the end? Did you blame me for not seeing you one last time?" "No way." He grinned, showing his fangs. "Why would I be mad at you, sis? I love you the most. In the next life, I'll still be your little brother." Waking up, my pillow was soaked. I realized I needed to stop torturing myself and live well, longer than the bad guys. The next day, I took Nick out. Philip blocked our way. I just wanted to bury him. He'd been out for too long, and his soul wouldn't rest. Thinking I had a change of heart, Philip nodded happily. "Fine, you can bury him wherever you want. I'll buy him the most expensive burial plot and make the arrangements." So, I took him to the temple. Being orphans, Nick and I grew up in the orphanage without any relatives, hometown, or a place to cling to. That's why I chose to take him to the temple. The temple was on top of a mountain, the highest place in the city. Wherever I went, if I looked south, I could see him there. When we reached the mountain, I prepared to take Nick in alone. But Philip wouldn't allow it. He was scared I'd do something foolish. "You want to come with me? Fine. If you crawl up these 999 steps leading to the temple, I'll agree," I said. With Nick's ashes in hand, I started climbing. Surprisingly, Philip knelt down behind me. Inside the temple, with incense lingering, and the sound of chanting, I suddenly felt an overwhelming peace. I knelt on a cushion and made a wish. "Nick, may you be a healthy and happy child in the next life." By the time we descended in the evening, Philip's legs were about to give out. He grabbed his pale lips and said, "They say those who climb these 999 steps can make a wish to the gods. I wish I could turn back time to the day we first met. If there were no schemes between us, you would have loved me, right? Do you always talk in your sleep like this during the day?" Jason and Bella's engagement is off for good. When he told me about it, he seemed remarkably relieved. He confessed that he had felt oppressed all these years in that home because he was the mistress's child. The elders in the family, even his biological father, despised him. He had to suppress his personality, bow before his brother, pretend not to like the family's rich heiress, and befriend those eyeing his girlfriend to please everyone. The day we eloped was the happiest I'd ever been. I knew we would get caught, but I just wanted to see Philip and Bella's faces when they lost. He sincerely apologized. "I had selfish motives, but my feelings for you were true. Nicole, you are the only variable in my life." He asked if there was still a chance for me to like him, but I shook my head. We had both schemed against each other, so two villains shouldn't taint love. After Bella's broken engagement, she went to see Philip several times. The man who promised to cherish her forever had finally had enough of her. He shut her out, even deleting all contact information. Soon after, Bella's family faced a crisis and was on the verge of bankruptcy. Neither family extended a helping hand. She had to seek refuge abroad and disappeared without a trace. A year later, Philip fell ill. I was away at university, doing well academically and even on a full scholarship. I no longer relied on Philip's money. The glamorous life of the rich was not for me. The butler pleaded for me to visit Philip, but I declined. On New Year's Eve, my roommate told me a very handsome man was waiting downstairs. It turned out to be a senior from my department. He invited me skiing the next day, but I refused, saying I wanted to study. He insisted, so he shoved a box of chocolates into my hands and ran off. After he left, I saw Philip, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He looked dashing in a wool coat, still handsome but visibly thinner, lacking color in his face. There are quite a few young guys here who like you, huh? He remarked jealously, staring at my hands. Why are you here? You didn't come to see me. It's time for curfew, I'm leaving, I replied, not wanting to engage with him further. Philip staggered backward, nearly losing his balance. The butler rushed to support him, barely keeping him standing. He was evidently very ill. Nicole, come back in some time, he called after me, his voice blending into the wind, tinged with a desolate tone. I really miss you. I ignored him and a year passed, with spring blossoming as usual. A man claiming to be a lawyer found me. Philip had passed away not long ago, and in his final moments, he had drawn up a will, leaving all his possessions to me. As I looked at the papers in my hand, I murmured, he's gone. The lawyer responded, but I couldn't catch his words clearly. Life is so fragile. Nick's ashes were enshrined in the temple on the mountain. Philip believed that when I went to pay respects to Nick, he would be there. My roommate nudged my shoulder, snapping me out of my thoughts. What are you daydreaming about? Hurry, you're going to be late for class. By the time I came back to my senses, the lawyer had already left. I took one last look southward. The sun was warm, the sky clear. In this story, where everyone was wicked, there were no winners. I donated all the money to social welfare organizations to help the children in the orphanage. I wished for love and health to prevail across the world, even without family by our sides. May children have chicken legs and candy in their childhood.